Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1734. Today we're talking about Audi Quattros, World Rally Champions.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm across the pond in England with a very, very interesting guy by the name of Jeremey Walton. He lives in a really old church. Maybe we'll learn about that. Jeremey, welcome to Cars Yeah. Are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
I am, Mark. I'm strapped in and ready to go.
All right. I'm trying to keep it on the track, sunny side and shiny side up, I should say. Now, before I give you a proper introduction, I would love for you to share one little thing that maybe most people don't know about you, Jeremey.
I keep chickens. I rescue chickens and keep them.
You rescue chickens. Wow. Well, I know people that keep chickens, but I didn't know that chickens had to be rescued. Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, they're kept in big battery houses in Britain, and at about 18 months old, the farmers throw them out. But they're still alive, and they can still yield eggs for another 2 or 3 years. So when they arrive, they're what we call oven ready. They've got very few feathers because they've been rubbing in a metal cage. So we give them a bit of life around a yew tree and some graves in the church. And in fact, chickens were jungle birds, so they love the trees. They love scratching around, and they cheer me up when I'm really depressed.
Well, I think that's very noble. That's a wonderful thing that you do. And I know that you live in a church that was built in 1840. Am I right about that?
You are absolutely right, but even more ancient was, in fact, there were churches here or places of worship mentioned right back to 1066 when Britain got invaded. The reason that I say 1840 is that we had a wicked Henry VIII who razed all the churches to the floor. Ours was one of them, but we got some of the walls left, and they rebuilt it in Victorian times, so we put 1840 on it. And there's one yew tree here that's probably as old as that.
Wow.
And a couple of gravestones that are marked 1639.
Wow. Well, that's pretty darn cool. Well, that's very fun. Well, let me give you a proper introduction, and we'll take a nice little ride today with Jeremey Walton, who's a freelance journalist, editor, and author with 33 original titles to his credit. He rides motorcycles and he cares for chickens, and he's been a pro rider and driver for media motoring tests as well as television and automotive advertisements. Jeremey started in minis and graduated to competition cars, including an original Ford GT40, and he was a former Ford Motorsport employee and consultant. His books cover marques including Ford, BMW, Audi, Lotus, and classic Mini Coopers, to name just a few. And his latest book that we're going to talk about today is titled Quattro, the Race and Rally Story, 1980 to 2004. And it explores 24 years of factory-prepared and factory-supported Audi Quattros in the motorsport world. Audi Quattros, of course, collected 4 World Rally Championships, 5 American Driver Manufacturing Crowns, and a single-year haul of 7 international touring car titles, plus numerous other honors. We'll be back in just a minute to talk about Audis, Jeremys, and maybe chickens. But first, a word from our valued sponsors. Before we move forward, give them a listen, give them a little love. We'll be right back. Buckle up. Do you have a pet in your household that loves to go for rides? Our pets are part of our families, but they can be very hard on your vehicle's interior. Covercraft offers a wide variety of solutions to protect your vehicle from Fido's rough treatment. Canine cargo area covers are padded for comfort and provide door-to-door protection. Pet pads have built-in features that keep cargo areas and seats protected. Covercraft's quality pet solutions cover cargo areas, bucket or bench seats, and protect from damaging claws, pet fur and hair, mud, moisture, and drool from permanently damaging those fine finishes on your vehicle's interiors. Choose from a variety of styles and covers for almost every vehicle that's made. And here's something I've got just for you and for Fido. Use the code YEAH120 at covercraft.com and you'll get 10% off your Covercraft pet protection order. That's right, 10% off. That'll make Fido happy. Simply use the code YEAH120, YEAH120 at checkout. Covercraft, protecting the things that move you. And Fido too. American Collectors Insurance, that's how I now protect my Porsche Turbo, the one I call my Orange Crush. Are you insuring your classic vehicles on your regular daily driver auto policy? Then your special vehicles are at risk. Your regular auto insurance carrier won't tell you how much you'll get until after a claim, and more than likely, you'll be in for a rude awakening. With agreed value policy from American Collectors Insurance, you'll be paid your vehicle's full agreed value. No surprises. If you're driving your collector car less than 5,000 miles a year, do what I did. Call American Collectors Insurance and get your very own agreed value policy tailored to your specific vehicle. If you're like me, you're picky about who works on your special ride. A great policy allows you to choose your repair shop of choice, and that means you'll know the job is done right. I shopped around and decided to protect my car with American Collectors Insurance. They've been protecting vehicles since 1976. Give them a call for a quote today at 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. And protect the ones you love. I did at American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. All right, Jeremy, we're back. Now, I would love to start this journey with you with a success quote. Maybe it's a mantra or a saying. Being a wordsmith like you are, I'm going to put a little pressure on you. I'm sure you're going to come up with something very special for us. It's a nice way to get those inspirational tires turning a little bit. So, Jeremy, I know you love to drive. Take the wheel.
Okay, I'm holding the steering wheel, but it's a cliche, really. If at first you don't succeed, try again.
You know, I love this. So explain that a little more, how it's applied to your very interesting and fun life.
Okay, so when I was a young man, all I wanted to do was race. I had no money and 2 kids. So in order to get into the motor racing world, I had to find a vehicle to travel on, if you like. And that vehicle was motoring journalism. And I was qualified as a proper journalist. It took me 3 years to do that. That's the try again. I kept applying to magazines, but they wanted technical qualifications, which I didn't have. So I just kept battering at the doors, calling on people, going to shows, stuff like that, shaking hands, pumping the flesh. But what it really yielded for me in the end was I was reading a classified ad in my favorite magazine, which was aimed at youngsters. And in the back, it said they wanted a qualified journalist. No car wannabes, a qualified journalist to sort some things out. I knocked on that door and it went half open, and I walked my application round. I was living in the city where the magazine was, walked my application round, and I got the job by the time the first letters came in. So that was my break.
Well, you know, it reminds me of a fellow Brit, guy by the name of Winston Churchill. That famous quote, "Never, ever, ever give up." Definitely is something that maybe it's part of you Brits over there. You just don't give up. But that's the way you have to treat everything in life, is you have to just keep trying, keep going. So many people give up so quickly, and you just have to keep going after it. And that certainly is what you've done. Now, today, you've written so many great books, but today we're going to talk about this book on Quattro. And I'd love for you to share some stories about what you learned as you put this book together, what the book is really all about. Of course, Quattro is known as their racing and rally history. I mean, the incredible success that they have. So dive a little bit into this wonderful book titled Quattro, the race and rally story.
Okay, it started for me as a result of my Ford connections. When I left the company, I carried on as a consultant, and I knew Hannu Mikkola, who was their lead Finnish rally driver. He told me one afternoon that he was going to go to Germany and test this Audi car because it was going to be sensational, because it had got four-wheel drive. They'd managed to get permission to put four-wheel drive on the things. Previous to that, Jeep and Range Rover here had run in endurance events, but they were not permitted to run in World Championship rounds. Anyway, long story short, Mr. Mikkola came good in that car, took the contract, even though he had years of success with Ford and had a Mercedes contract in his pocket as well. And when he came back to Britain to compete in a World Championship round, he gave me a ride in the car. That was it. I realised that my Ford affections were really, really out of date, and that here was a whole new world. Turbocharged, four-wheel drive. It hurt your neck when it accelerated on mud. Amazing.
Yeah, they had an amazing history of wins when they came out. And I think about Audi nowadays, you just think four-wheel drive Audi. I mean, it's something that just comes to mind. But back then, that was something really new for a street car, if you will, not to mention rally and race cars, right?
Yeah, right. And I think that the most interesting quote that some of the reviewers have pulled out was that when they were first making plans to produce this car, one of the very high up executives said, I can't see even 400 members of the public buying this. Today, there are over 10 million vehicles with Quattro badges on.
Yeah, I guess he missed that one just a little bit.
Like you missed the Beatles.
Yeah, exactly. You said something interesting at the beginning here. They got permission. Now, is there something you know that I don't know about? Did they have to get permission from the German government or from some kind of Department of Transportation to put four-wheel drive in a streetcar?
Good question. The basis of it was that you were not allowed to run four-wheel drive in World Championship rallies. Audi needed to do World Championship rallies to get the prestige like winning at Monte Carlo, something to advertise, to sell vehicles. So this was absolutely key. You have to get permission, which really hurts in Britain, from a bunch of Parisians at the FIA, Federation International Automobile. They founded the rules. They got the bat and ball for international motorsport. So in order to homologate or recognize any vehicle, you have to go cap in hand to the French and make a case. Well, somehow an executive at Audi who'd been there a long time called Jürgen Stockmar, he campaigned amongst the other rally team managers, including Ford and Lancia Fiat. And he said to them, we're thinking of running a four-wheel drive vehicle. You don't mind, do you guys? And they all laughed. They said, no, that's not a problem. You're just going to be carrying a load of ironmongery around. It's not going to do you any good. I think the Audi executive forgot to add that the vehicle was going to be turbocharged, have about 150 horsepower more than any opposition, and it was going to have a way of getting it to the ground. Ice, mud, perfect, absolutely perfect.
Oh, brilliant. I love that. It's a cool story. So tell us some of the interesting things you discovered when you were doing the research and writing this book about the Quattros and their racing history.
Well, I think I'd like to start with the people. There's a man who recently died, Ferdinand Piëch, who was part of the Porsche dynasty. But he was a key figure at Audi when I started doing the research. And I was fortunate enough to have his blessing while I was in there, which had been granted by the sort of public relations departments in Germany and Britain. So I got to sit with him a couple of times. But the real meat and vegetables came from the engineers who'd worked on the project. Now, sadly, today, those engineers obviously aren't there anymore. They've retired, they go gliding, they go skiing or whatever. So I was very fortunate in the early 80s to be given access to all areas. Well, actually, I'm sure they hid a lot of areas away from me, but that's what they told me.
Yep.
And with my schoolboy German, I wasn't going to argue. Anyway, Ferdinand Piëch was an autocratic, dynamic guy with the driest sense of humor you ever met. You knew that if he'd been in charge in 1939, Britain would just be a German sub-state. He was so thorough, so focused. But I was lucky, I was fortunate that the guy decided he would speak to me. And he was the one who got the permissions. With his sort of Porsche royalty behind him, he could push a project through. So when I was studying Audi and going to events and so on, usually in a corner somewhere, Piëch would be there overseeing it. And he was really, really harsh on his staff. I haven't heard anybody, including Henry Ford too, when I was at the company, who had anything like the drive, focus. And this guy, of course, had a technical background as well. So he was an awesome force. Probably the only chink in his makeup was he didn't really do humanity very well. Small story. Audi Quattro for the street, later on, had a voice option in the dashboard. And Piëch said to me over lunch at one point, he said, It's a woman's voice. The only time I want to hear a woman's voice is in the bedroom.
Oh my gosh. Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ouch.
Try that in 2020. It was
Yeah.
said, I have to say, it was said in 1984, 5, and Mr. Piech had 13 children, 3 children, and I think he had 3 wives. So there was something attractive about him.
Well, something, but yeah, I'm not surprised 3 wives with a statement like that. Holy cow.
Got it.
What was one of the biggest revelations when it comes to what Quattro and Audi did on the racetrack that you uncovered?
I'm afraid it was a personal discovery, really. When the road cars were available, I sort of covered World Championship rallies. So I'd go round the route and go to all the checkpoints and talk to the drivers and so on. And I'd been used to, well, there were Ford Motor Company products, but many others just with 2-wheel drive. So I'd go around a 2,000-mile route in pouring rain or snow or whatever. I just felt like I was in my front room, and that made a convert.
Wow.
And I've been a zealot ever since, I'm afraid.
Yeah, they're pretty spectacular vehicles. When you were working on this book, was there something that you came across that really, really kind of set you back that you didn't expect at all?
Yeah, there were quite a few things that's inevitable. I think my biggest surprise was a general one, that no publisher really wanted to publish the story of the American racing. The rally thing's well known. You know, it was obvious that it got a 4-wheel drive high-performance vehicle against a bunch of people with rear drive and less power. You're going to do some winning, especially with the world's finest drivers. But then, and it was, to be fair, it was part of Piech's mantra. He always said that Quattro should be proved on the racetrack as well as on muddy roads. And it was, again, his dynamism. Even when they were doing the first tests, they took the prototype cars to Hockenheim and ran them around versus a Porsche 928. And Piech wouldn't let go till it was quicker than a 928 around that track. This is 1980, actually it's probably 79, 78, long before the car made its debut. The other sensation, I have to say, was when they launched it at Geneva Show. Now, as a Brit, the legend is Jaguar E-Type, launched at Geneva Show, million stories about that. But the Audi Quattro, in the first generation, had an equal impact. And it had an equal impact for Brits because they were so clever. They put the guys in the car on a snow-sided mountain straight away, out the show halls. Jesus, that was clever.
Yeah, showmanship for sure. That's interesting, putting the car up against a 928. That's really fascinating. That dynamic difference between Porsche, Audi, the fact that Piech was part of Porsche really for such a long time, and then to put that car up against that vehicle, that was an interesting dynamic going on there. I wonder if a couple people at Porsche raised an eyebrow to that.
Well, the Piech family had caused quite a lot of trouble inside Porsche. Need a Porsche expert. I must say my personal business mantra is I don't do Porsche, I don't do MG, and I don't do Jaguar. Why? Because other people have done it really well, or done it really badly. I don't want to be there. A journalist legend in England, a guy who won the Mille Miglia with Sterling Moss, once said to me, "You've got a good thing going on there, Jeremy. Write about the things you know and nobody can argue with you."
I think that's great advice for anybody, even when it comes to writing or speaking. You know, I'm going to write that one down. I think that's a good one. I always ask my guests to share a big challenge they faced in their life or their career. Now, this could tie to the book, or it could tie to something else in your life. You have such an interesting life. You know, I'll tell our listeners in our pre-show chat, Jeremy spent some time in Southern California where I grew up, and we had a great time talking about Newport Beach, La Jolla, all areas that he'd been to, Riverside Raceway back when it existed and so forth. But I'd love for you to talk about a big challenge that you faced. And more importantly, in this story is how did you overcome it? And what was that lesson learned so that you could move forward in a very positive way?
Okay, it's pretty personal rather than automotive.
Okay.
But my father died when I was 13.
Oh, goodness.
And I'd been a spoiled child with everything that you could have, a riverside home and all that stuff. And within 6 months, I was living 100 miles away in a rented house with my one surviving parent and making sure that I started to earn some money on paper rounds and being a lifeguard at a local public school. Sorry, public school is the posh school in England. So what it made me do was stop being a spoilt little brat and get out there and get off my butt and do something. And that really gave me a dynamism and a really unattractive focus that made sure that, yeah, you can achieve your business goals, but your personal life may be spoilt by your focus on what you want to achieve. And as an older man, I'm 74 years old now, it's hard to let go of that competitive streak. And that doesn't really suit an older life.
I understand. I'm really sorry to hear that. What a formidable age to lose a father, and then for it to disrupt your life the way that it did. But I really find it wonderful, the fact that you see, I don't know where in your point in your life you saw it, how that molded you in a positive way. Because most people would say, well, that's tragic, that's terrible, and you could go down another path. But for you, it's kind of like, pull your boots up, kid. Time to get to work. Very tough age to do that at 13. Maybe if you were 18, 19, 20, but that's a very formidable time in your life.
I think on a reality check, I'd been used to pretty well everything in life. And I thought, if I want to get that back, I'm going to have to work for it. And that was the thing. And until I was about 55 years of age, I worked to try and get really my father's old life back. And I lived in the same area where he lived with us and all the rest of it. And that was like going to La Jolla or a high-end estate area. I lived in a place called Henley-on-Thames. And to get there, I had to live in some badlands in London and east of England where the shotgun did the talking.
Yeah, the shotgun did the talking. There's another great quote. I've got a couple from you today. Well, I appreciate you sharing a really personal part of your life with us. And I guess in a way, I don't guess, it sounds like in a way, this really helped form what your life has become and the drive that you have to get things done. And as you said at the beginning, for the doors to crack open and get your foot in there and get some work done in your life. Sounds like you've done pretty well for yourself, Jeremey.
I did. I should pay tribute to my first wife, who unfortunately passed away last year. Obviously, you need a great woman behind you. Her name was Patricia Ann, and she did a hell of a solid job with 2 kids, and to start off with one room with the cooker in it and a baby. So she did some really tough stuff, and I wouldn't, that's why I could then get on with business. And it was an old-fashioned layout where I did try to hunter-gatherer, and she made sure that I'd got something to come home to, and together it made it work,
Well, my condolences for losing your wife, Patricia Ann. Sounds like a wonderful woman and a wonderful life that she helped you both make in the world. And I think it's great, too, today. You're still working hard and doing things in the field that you're so passionate about. You're not sitting on a porch, that's for sure.
No. And in fact, we've got some forward projects now. The Audi book seems to have woken people up that I'm still alive and capable of moving a typewriter.
You are quite alive, that's for sure.
Well, I've been very fortunate. My mother was a 100-yard sprinter and my father was a 100-yard swimmer, so they were both pretty competitive. And when they came to watch school sports, they wouldn't speak to me if I was second. If I was first, I got a hello.
Wow. Well, there you go. That competitive DNA.
It was tough. Tough love.
Yeah, well, hey, it worked. It worked. Let's take a short break. We come back. I want to dive into your personal passion for cars here, which you obviously have. So sit tight. Here's a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. Did you know that Cars Yeah is in the top 1% of all podcasts based on listenership, according to Libsyn, the premier RSS feed for podcasts in the United States? That's right. And Cars Yeah is the only 5-day-a-week automotive-focused podcast for you to get your message into the ears of thousands of listeners daily from all over the world. Plus, DuPont Registry recommended Cars Yeah is one of their top 10 car podcasts for you to enjoy. Cars Yeah has experienced tremendous growth, plus your ads are evergreen, meaning they never go away. And more listeners find Cars Yeah every day for their daily dose of automotive inspiration. Do you want to expose your brand to a highly targeted list of automotive enthusiasts in a very unique and very personal way? Well, I can help you. contact me, Mark Green, at mark@carsyeah.com or through the website at carsyeah.com today to learn more. Did you know that less than 3% of all automotive technicians in the United States are women? You may not be surprised, but you should be concerned because our country is facing a massive technician shortage right now. Skilled, qualified techs are in high demand, and we need young women and men to consider these careers as a viable path to a fulfilling life. I've interviewed hundreds of women in the automotive sector here on Cars Yeah, and I know that women make great techs. That's why I support the nonprofit Tech Force Foundation and its Women Techs Rock initiative to ensure women see themselves in the profession, the industry, and the workforce. Learn more at techforce.org today. All right, Jeremy, we're back, and I would love for you to share a story that instigated that passion that you have for cars. Was there a pivotal moment when you think back, maybe as a young lad or a boy, or maybe it took a little while when you knew, you know what, I'm a bit of a car and a bike guy?
Yeah, my dad was pretty keen, and he had an MG all tricked up for track stuff, but he was more of a horse person professionally, and he actually got to pretty high level owning horses in Britain, not riding them, but training them and so on. But the cars were his second passion. You often find it in England, I'm sure elsewhere, good horsemen, they have really good hands on the reins. So at one stage of my life, we trained drivers to appear in celebrity events, and we had a couple of European champion riders in, and they were so much quicker, so much more sensitive than any other celebrity we had. The worst, a boxer dressed in pink.
Well,
you didn't point out that he was a heavyweight boxer.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, you think about it. I remember being in racing school when I was vintage racing, and instructors talking about the proper way to hold the steering wheel, not grip it tight, but light touch. And you look at photographs of especially older race car drivers and before the paddle shifters and so forth, and the way their hands were on that wheel and a delicate little dance. So I never thought about that relationship between horses and reins and vehicles and steering wheels, but yeah, makes sense.
That's how it happens. Yeah, it really does translate. I've seen it quite a lot of times. It's pretty hard to beat somebody who's got a equine background. If celebrities come together, and of course Britain's perhaps a more horsey place than most, usually, and you put them in equal cars, well, allegedly equal cars, they'll usually be 1-2 or thereabouts.
Interesting. Wow, that is very cool. Well, let's talk about a really special car vehicle in your life, and I want to mention to our listeners here, Jeremy here today has some interesting ownerships and projects. And let me list a few. A 1958 Frog Eye Austin Healey Sprite, a 1998 Lotus Elise 135 Sport, a 2006, there's the Audi TT Quattro Sport, and assorted Range Rovers, of course. You can't be a Brit without having owned a Range Rover or two, and a 1985 BMW 635 CSI. There's a pretty cool car. Tell me about one special vehicle in your life that really has a place or holds a place in your heart, and maybe share a memory or two about that vehicle.
Okay, the one that fired my enthusiasm personally was a Triumph Bonneville motorcycle. This was a real revelation. It was about as fast as an E-Type, but it cost me £300 instead of $2,000. And as a young and foolish man, I would go out looking for Jaguars. Of course, you couldn't go around corners at the same speed. 2 wheels does not equal 4. But the first time I did 100 miles an hour on that motorcycle at night around a local town bypass, that was an experience. That's literally like riding an iron bedstead that has got a boat engine in it. It just vibrated from one end. Your teeth rattled, your eyes watered. Yep. But Jesus, it was fun.
Yeah, the Bonneville. I mean, that's such a classic. Anybody who loves old bikes, that's got to be on a short list.
Yep. Absolutely. And it was a 1961, so it was with a separate gearbox to the engine, and it was all laid out as what we call a cafe racer. So it had the low bars, the rear sets, and all that. It was just absolutely it. But when I met the aforesaid first wife, she had one ride on the back of that and said, "You're getting a car."
No doubt. No doubt. Well, that meant she cared about you. That's all that meant. When I got back into riding bikes, one of the motorcycles I bought was a 750 Ducati Monster. And I had the brilliant idea of buying my wife a helmet and a leather jacket and taking her for a ride. And we went on this ride. I didn't go crazy. I was very careful. I came back. She got off and I said, "What do you think?" And she said, "I think you need to sell this thing." And she said, "I'm never getting on that again. And you do know we have 2 young children that you need to raise, right?" And that was a bad option for me. And then I got even crazier, Jeremy. I bought an MV Agusta F4.
Wow.
Yeah. And then she looked at me and realized I was totally insane. So, there you go. I have a very introspective question for you, my friend. If you woke up tomorrow and you were manifest as a vehicle, what would Jeremey Walton be? But more importantly, in the question is, why?
He would be amphibious.
Amphibious?
I love water. I want an amphibious vehicle.
Amphicar.
Yeah, well, I don't want to own one. If I was a car, I'd be amphibious because I love water. I was born under the sign of the crab, Cancerian, and I've lived beside water. I absolutely adore it in every form. And I make sure that the chickens have it every day. Nobody else bothers, but they have water every day. So it would be an amphibious vehicle. I have one experience of it. A German hotelier took me for a ride, not on the Rhine, the Moselle, in an amphibious vehicle which looked like a Triumph Herald. I can't remember what it might have been, a DKW or something like that. And it was bright green, lime green, and it was convertible. And I thought, yeah, this is really cool. We drove down a ramp into the Moselle and off we chugged. Fantastic.
You know, the Amphicar, when my son was small, I was down on a local lake here with a friend who'd bought a new Chris Craft, or actually it was an old Chris Craft in 1958.
Wow, yeah.
And we were getting ready to go out, and I was helping him back the boat in. And my son, who was about 5 or 6 at the time, said, Dad, there's a car in the water. And I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "There's a car in the water." And I said, No, the boat's going in the water. He goes, "No, Dad, there's a car in the water." And I turned around, and this gentleman who lives on a small island in this lake came driving up the boat ramp in his Amphicar. Sure enough, there was a car in the water.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go. But I love the way you answer that, Jeremy. And I think what I'm going to do for you here, because of your adventurous nature, I'm going to make you that 007 Lotus James Bond car.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. How does that sound?
That Esprit. And in fact, shameless business plug, I did write an Esprit book years ago for a publisher in Colorado Springs, Coterie Publishing.
Okay.
And they do a lot of Lotus books. William Taylor, I think that's his name. And we did the Elise for him as well.
All right.
But I must say, Colorado Springs is pretty special to me. I've got some friends there who I've spent time with, and they've been kind to lend me cars and stuff. But for a Brit, I couldn't believe we did a drive around, and we drove for a day, and we'd done 700 miles, and we were still in the same state. It just doesn't happen in Britain. I'd have got to Scotland by then.
Well, try coming to Texas sometime. You could drive around for a week and still be in the same state.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, fair comment.
Exactly. What's one of your personal habits, Jeremy, that you believe has contributed to your success over these years?
I think focus and determination, really. You know, that's what gets results. Whatever talent you have, and I think it applied to Graham Hill back in the day. I remember talking to people who ran him in World Championship races, and that you could see that Jim Clark had talent and it was effortless. For Graham Hill, it was a real grind, and I'm a grinder.
There ain't nothing wrong with that. Now, you've no doubt had a lot of drinks and meals with very cool people. Is there one person in particular maybe you haven't, either living or someone who's passed, that you'd love to sit down with?
He has passed recently. I never had a meal with him. I sat in his workshop for an afternoon. His name was Daniel Sexton Gurney, and his protege was Swede Savage, who was alive at that point. Tells you how long ago it was.
Yeah.
And I went from Newport Beach to visit with him. I think it was in Orange County. And for me, just absolute hero. And I didn't know Jim Clark, but it's said that Dan was the only driver that Jim really feared. And so far as we know, Jim Clark was the best. And when you were talking earlier about the light hands on a wheel. I did see Jim Clark race quite a lot, and it was actually really boring because nothing seemed to happen. There was no skids, there were no slides. It's not like, I should imagine watching Parnelli Jones in a Mustang must have been just it. I love action, but Jim Clark proved this is how you do it. Apparently all he wanted to be was a sheep farmer.
Well, Jimmy was smooth, that's for sure. When it comes to automotive advice, what's the best advice someone else ever offered to you, Jeremy?
Well, it was connected with advice. I had a very famous manager at Ford called Stuart Turner, who'd managed the BMC team on Monte Carlo and many other places. And I had to work for him as a sort of second in command and do his wishes. And I was in his office one day and he said, look, Jeremy, don't be afraid of failure. Fail as often as you like, but come back with a result in the end. Failure teaches you, success doesn't. So that's the best advice I had.
Nicky Lauda had a great quote about that he's learned a lot more from his losses than he ever did from his wins. And he always said, never discount a loss because you can learn a lot from it. So as we are in this new year, 2021, I'd encourage everybody out there, dare to fail and fail big. Go out there and try something you've never tried before. Give it a swing because you know what? You may find it's something you really love. Absolutely.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to great resources, today we have resources that you and I, as a young person, never dreamed would be available to us. But is there a great resource that's a go-to for you you'd like to share?
Most of the things are pretty obvious. But in order to be an effective writer, you're cultivating contacts that you hope are out of the limelight because you don't really want your rivals into that and you don't really want your rivals to learn how you're getting stuff. Same as a race driver, if somebody says, well, I do that corner flat out, you think, right, okay, well, that's one thing I'm not going to do because the crash will be expensive and painful.
Oh, yeah.
So the resources that I use the web resources are incredible. And I must say, particularly with this Audi book, it enabled me to do the US side a hell of a lot better than I could have done in the past. The reason for that was that I spent time with Champion Racing of Florida, Pompano Beach in Florida, in the early millennium. But the web enabled me to catch up and get in contact with some of their lead drivers in 2020, 2019. And if we hadn't had the web, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I wouldn't have been able to get so many quotes from some wonderful drivers who'd driven the stuff. And I also wouldn't have caught up with some stories that were sad in a way. The proprietor of Champion Racing died, of course, Dave Mirage. And also the photographer, a very special photographer that did a lot of the shoots when I drove a car in the US, he died as well. He was ex-military submarines, but civilian life just didn't do it for him. And he took wonderful photographs. He was really techie, but I think there's a lesson for all of us there. You have to preserve some human relationships as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, tough thing to do last year when we were all locked up and kept away from everybody. So we're all wishing much, much better year this year in the new year as things progress. So let's hope that happens. I'll remind everybody the book we're talking about today, Quattro, the race and rally story. I'll put links to how you can get your hands on a copy, and I encourage you to add this to your automotive library. It's absolutely brilliant. Is there another book you might share? Now, you've written lots and lots of books, and I would assume, do you have an author page on Amazon I can link to where people can find those books?
Yeah, it's just straightforward Jeremy Walton. Okay. And that's the best way of seeing what I've done. Incidentally, I did write one novel as well, which inevitably had an automotive background, and I enjoyed doing that as a relaxation away. But for me, the best book is the next book, and the next book, shameless plug coming up, is a Ford book. For the first time in 25 years, I'm going back to it. And what I'm going to do is talk about 50 years of fast Fords that I've actually driven. And to that end, the GT40 thing came not when I was at the company, but 10, 15 years later, when they've got two in England, which they've had from new. So you know they're GT40s, which is like the first thing you want to do. You will have seen this in vintage racing. And I ended up for 2 or 3 years driving sort of VIPs around who weren't allowed to drive the GT40s. And I drove them from a a country house called Bewley, where there's a museum, literally around the garden with the company chairman in, to Le Mans, the preview in 1996, celebrating the 1966 win. So that was a huge privilege, and it's one I intend to make shameless use of in the next title.
Well, no doubt. Oh my gosh, that's quite a chauffeur job. I think that's the best chauffeur job in the world. So
I got paid.
Even better. Yeah, absolutely. Well, do you have a time that book would be coming out that we can look forward to?
Schedule is April 2022. I didn't want to tie myself to a short turnaround after the Audi book, because the rollout for the Audi book has been a little bit more protracted in the US, and it was also slightly later in the UK than I would have liked. We were lucky to catch the 40th anniversary, actually, but we did, and I'm pleased about that. It was a complete accident. I'd been trying to get the racing side in for a long, long time, and oddly enough, all the publishers wanted was rally stories, but hey, we found somebody who agreed.
There you go. I love it. All right, we're up to the checkered flag here. We're almost at the end of our ride together here, Jeremy. I'm going to buy you a collector car today, something very fun to park in your garage. Don't let the chickens jump all over it, but I want you to enjoy this car. It needs to tick a lot of boxes, something that you'll drive, something you'll enjoy. But there's a couple rules to the game that might help you make the decision. One is it's the only collector car you can have. The other is you can't sell it to fund whatever you want to do in life. It's got to be a keeper, so that little trick is off the table.
You know me too well.
Well, I've learned
I'd have flipped it out the door.
Yeah, after 1,734 interviews, I've learned you tricky car guys. So what am I going to buy you today, Jeremy, that's going to stay in your garage?
You're going to buy me a 1962 Ferrari Lusso in dark blue with a white stripe.
I love it. Yeah. Dark blue with a white stripe. Kind of reminds me of Sir Sterling Moss a little bit.
You got it. That's my favorite one. Absolutely. But also, I think Mr. McQueen, who was quite good at pedaling around, he had one, and I think his was blue or dark. I had a red one for a week in 1970, which was offered to me for £2,500. That wouldn't have been more than, it wouldn't have been more than $4,000. And at the time, my house was worth a little bit more than that, but it had 2 children and a wife in it. Yeah. They didn't seem keen on the part exchange. I should explain why I was able to access the car. In fact, I drove the car 2 or 3 times, but that doesn't matter. The car had a connecting rod go through the block, and my race entrance had repaired it, but a repaired Ferrari doesn't fetch the same money. So if you take it back to 1970, $2,500 was still the price of a 3-bedroom house in England.
A Ferrari Lusso. Nice choice, my friend. You're going to look good driving through the countryside with a couple chickens in the seat beside you and maybe some eggs or 2 in the back of that car. Jeremy, you've taken me on a fabulous ride today. This has been really fun. I want to thank you for sharing your life and your journey, and commend you on continuing to write fantastic books for us. I can't wait to hear about the next one. I want to do a shout-out thank you to my good friend Judy Stropus, who introduced us together. Judy brings us some wonderful guests here on Cars Yeah. She always knows the coolest people, and you have not let me down in that case. Before I let you go, though, in this new year, is there one little parting piece of wisdom or guidance you might offer everybody before you drive off into the English countryside in that 62 Lusso?
Just keep on doing what you're doing and enjoy it.
Yeah, life is important. Enjoy it. And in this new year, you know what? Again, dare to fail. Get out there. Push yourself a little bit like you would in a Lusso on a tight corner on an English country road. Jeremy, thanks for being so generous today with your time and your expertise and for sharing your life with me today. This has been brilliant fun. I always love crossing the pond. Until you and I talk again, my friend, I'll see you down the road.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
This has been great. GS Events was founded by Cindy Sisson and Teresa Gilpatrick. Together they create strategic alliances, curated events, and business development connecting automotive brands to discerning audiences. Their flagship offering, Women Shifting Gears, amplifies women's voices and participation in the automotive culture. Through strategically developed events, they create innovative concepts and collaborations that create remarkable professional and personal experiences you won't find anywhere else. GS Events' immersive, inclusive opportunities create networking, skill building, and unforgettable experiences. Whether you enjoy rallies, concours, auctions, restoration, the business side of collected cars, or you always have yearned to expand your skills to drive vehicles to its fullest potential, GS Events has automotive events and experiences designed just for you. And by the way, both Cindy and Teresa are past guests here on Cars Yeah, so give them a listen. You can find gsevents.live on their website today. Kevin Buckler is a winning racer and team owner of the Racers Group. He has over 100 professional wins, multiple wins at the 24-hour of Daytona, and a win at Le Mans. Kevin realized the racing world is about the people and founded Adobe Road Winery. He and his team have created a winning combination with the Racing Series, 4 ultra-premium red wine blends that are in a class of their own with a racing twist. Just like in racing, these wines comprise of art, precision, engineering, science, superb taste, all blended together with a whole lot of fun. There are 4 carefully crafted blends with race-inspired names: Redline, Apex, Shift, and the 24. When you purchase all 4, you get the entire lineup in a beautifully designed gift box. There's a printed description of the blends inside the box lid, and every bottle is parked in a protective, die-cut placeholder. The bottles feature 3-dimensional labels, and I promise you'll want to keep them after enjoying these delicious wines. The box is so cool, you'll want to keep it too. The Racing Series is a killer gift for the automotive enthusiasts in your life, and I have a deal for you. If you use the code CARSYEAH, all one word, all caps, at checkout, you'll get $10 off any purchase of wine from the Racing Series. Your wine ships promptly and arrives quickly. Use the code CARSYEAH at checkout for $10 off on your purchase today. There's always a seat at the table for excellence with the Racing Series. Go to adoberoadwines.com and use the code CARSYEAH today to get your deal. Cheers.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.